What's up, everybody? This is Danny, and today I'm finally bringing you the full review of the iPhone 6 Plus. And I know you've seen a ton of these iPhone 6 Plus reviews already, and since I've had this phone for about 3 months now, I think that gives me a good chance to tell you exactly how it's like to use this device for a long extended period of time. So here is my full review of the iPhone 6 Plus after 3 months of solid use. Just in case you didn't know, there were 2 new iPhones released this year, and the one on the right is the iPhone 6, which is the 4.7-inch model. And after using both of them, the iPhone 6 is definitely the more comfortable one to use, where the power button and the volume rockers are. It's just a much better placement and more ergonomic in your hand. So I think the biggest problem for most people is the actual size of the iPhone 6 Plus. And for me, it really wasn't the size, but it's where the button placement was. If you look at the power button, it's really high up on the device itself, and you have to scoot your hand up to get to the power button. It would have been much better where the SIM card tray is right there, so I wish that was in a different position. But when it comes to the actual pocketability, I really didn't have that many problems. For a lot of people, if you wear skinny jeans, it's going to be an issue, and I think that you're really going to be able to feel it in your pocket. And for women, it's probably going to be one of those purse-related type things where you want to put them in there. But remember, you don't want to put it in your back pocket because everybody has seen that bend test, and you know that it's pretty flexible under a lot of pressure. If you're used to using something like the Samsung Galaxy Note 3 or 4 or any of the other larger Android phones out there, then I don't think size is really going to be an issue for you. Actually, the Nexus 6 right next to it is actually a bigger phone, so I didn't really have any problems using it on a day-to-day basis since I use Android phones primarily, and Android phones have had this 5.5-inch footprint for a long time. Even though this is a larger 5.5-inch footprint, I really didn't have any problems with it on day-to-day use, but your case might be a little bit different. Design-wise, the iPhone 6 Plus did not disappoint me. Yeah, it's got some of those funky antenna lines on there that don't look quite natural, but the build quality is absolutely fantastic. It's got all metal on the back. It feels quite like the HTC One M8, and the protruding camera really didn't bother me that much because I put a case on it. That's the one thing about this phone I have to say. It's pretty delicate. It can scratch easy on the back because of the metal, and I put a glass screen protector on the front because I scratched it within the first week that I had it. So if you're going to use this as a daily driver, I definitely recommend putting a glass screen protector on there. Speaking of the display, it is a 5.5-inch 1080p display, and in the world of Quad HD displays out there by other Android manufacturers, you would think that this panel would be lesser. But really, in the end, this 1080p display is a fantastic display. It is an IPS panel, it has fantastic viewing angles, it's nice and bright outside, it's got good contrast levels. This is a fantastic 1080p display, and yes, I would like higher resolution, but really, this display did not disappoint me at all. It is one of the best displays out there, so I loved it for the multimedia experience as well. I catch up on my favorite YouTube channels and also TV shows and movies on this, and I really enjoyed the multimedia experience on the iPhone 6 Plus. Even though I like the big display, I'm a little bit disappointed on how they're handling the larger screen real estate because it's really not being taken advantage of. And some of the other apps do have some multi-column stuff, and Apple's own apps do have multi-columns here as well. And it's really nice to have tab view and things like that in Safari. And the only thing I can say is that they pretty much took the iPad experience and moved it over to the iPhone 6 Plus. It's kind of lazy when it comes to software implementation in my book. There are a few other things that I'm going to show you. It's nice to have tab view here in Safari, but the one thing that I noticed is having only 1 GB of RAM on here, you can see that having a bunch of tabs open really kind of hurts the refresh here. You have to see that it has to refresh the websites, so you have to close out a few to actually have them work properly. Now let me know if this is an issue for you. I noticed that in the tab view. When it comes to the actual day-to-day operation, I'm not seeing a lot of lag and slowdown, but I did notice that here in Safari. There are a few extra functions here in the landscape keyboard, but I found them pretty much useless. So when it comes to the screen rotation, I think some people appreciate it. It's kind of cool that you can put it into landscape mode, but there's something that's super annoying is when you take it out of your pocket, it's already flipped the wrong way, and then you'll have to flip it back into regular rotation. That is so annoying and happens all the time, so I end up just disabling the rotation. So what about the software and performance experience in the 3 months that I've used the iPhone 6 Plus? Well, even though that the A8 is only a dual-core processor coupled with 1 GB of RAM, it actually does a fairly good job of everyday tasks. Normal things are very snappy. I don't really experience that many hiccups or stutters, but I have to say iOS 8 in the very beginning was pretty buggy. I think they did a pretty poor job of pushing out iOS 8. It wasn't tested very well, and on the iPhone 6, it was actually even worse for me. But the software experience is pretty much the same as iOS 7. There's a few new things here that you will notice, but generally the UI looks exactly the same. The closest thing that we get to a live widget on the home screen is that clock. Do you see the second hand moving? That's pretty hilarious. And we do have some support for third-party keyboards, but to be honest with you, the third-party keyboards are just generally pretty terrible. They don't perform well. I just end up using the stock one every time. No doubt that the iPhone 6 Plus is a two-handed device, but if you're going to try to use this thing one-handed, Apple put something in the software called reachability where you can double tap on the home button to shrink the UI to pretty much half the screen size. And to be honest with you, this is pretty awkward. It's a pretty terrible implementation for me. This is not a solution to a large footprint whatsoever. It's awkward to use. You have to keep double tapping every single time that you go into a different app. I just don't like this whatsoever, and I never used it. So let me know what you guys think, or if you use reachability on iOS 8 on your iOS device, let me know. Oh yeah, well this thing's a phone, right? So I guess we need to touch on the phone call quality a little bit. In my experience, I've had absolutely no problems, no drop calls. That's just like any other modern phone these days. Not the clearest earpiece I've ever heard, but it's loud enough. It definitely does its job. So I've had no problems with the call quality in the 3 months that I've been using this as my primary daily driver. So let's talk about one of the biggest advantages of having this larger footprint, and that is having a larger battery. The iPhone 6 Plus has a 2,915 milliamp hour battery, and even though that's not the biggest battery out there, let me tell you that the iPhone 6 Plus battery does not disappoint. I could not kill this thing in a single day, and on moderate use, I can definitely go 2 full days. The battery life is absolutely incredible, and that's what has kept this phone in my pocket for the last 3 months. This has been my longest daily driver, and I primarily use Android phones as well, so you will not be disappointed at all in the battery life of the iPhone 6 Plus. It is absolutely phenomenal. So the last thing I'm going to cover is the camera on the iPhone 6 Plus. So they kept the same 8 megapixel resolution as last year's iPhone 5S, and they did tweak the optics a little bit. And the biggest inclusion this year is optical image stabilization for the iPhone 6 Plus. They did not include that for the iPhone 6, which I think is pretty sad. Whether you love the iPhone or you hate the iPhone, there's one thing that we really can't deny when it comes to the iPhone experience is actually the camera quality. And I actually love the simple UI interface here. And this year you get 240 frame per second slow-mo, you get time lapse. And what I like about the software experience is it's all right there, all in a single swipe. You don't have to download extra things. All of that stuff is right here in a really simple interface, and I appreciate that. I have used an insane amount of devices this year on the Android side, and even though there are some great phones out there like the Samsung Galaxy Note 4, the iPhone 6 Plus still gives the most consistent camera experience and the most consistent outcomes when it comes to the camera quality. The shutter is nice and fast and has support for HDR and some other camera modes. But in the end, I think the iPhone 6 Plus has some of the most consistent images and some of the crispiest images that I've seen from a mobile camera this year. And trust me, I've used a ton of them, and consistency is the biggest key for me. You don't really have to do that much. It just knows how to take a shot on its own. So you don't have to change modes or do anything. I think it just has a great depth of field. It's got a great color replication, natural colors as well. So I think a lot of people would agree that the iPhone is very consistent when it comes to snapping pictures. So I use this a lot on a day-to-day basis for Instagram, Twitter, and it just comes out with consistent images. Low light is also some of the best that come off of a mobile camera. I think a lot of that has to do with the optical image stabilization helping out there. So I really like the images that come off, but not all the time is it perfect. You can see that the colors sometimes get kind of screwed up when it comes to low light situations. So if you are looking for some time-lapse video, some slow motion video, and want to see what this camera is capable of, I made a separate video for that, and I will leave that video in the description section below. So overall, I think that the iPhone 6 Plus is a really solid package from Apple this year. And even though I think it's kind of a clunky implementation of a larger phone, the footprint is huge. And I don't know if Apple really knew what they were doing when they were getting into the larger phablet game. But in the end, I think it's produced the best iPhone that they've ever produced. And a lot of people had gripes about the battery life on their previous iPhones, and this squashes that. We were looking at lower resolution screens before, and this squashes that as well. It keeps a consistent camera, and the gaming is also phenomenal, and so is the multimedia experience. And I think overall, the iPhone 6 Plus is one of the best phones that I've used in 2014. Even though I like this device a lot, it could be so much better. I mean, take a look at it against the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. I mean, Samsung really knew what they were doing when they created the Note 4 because it has true split-screen multitasking. It has a lot of software advantages that take advantage of that larger display, where Apple really did not. I feel like they rushed this to the market to give a larger display because people wanted that display and they knew it would sell, and it's selling extremely well. And in its own right, it's a great phone, but it needs some software to take advantage of this larger display. With the software, I just wish that Apple was a little bit more open and allowed widgets and different things that will allow the user to kind of customize what they want on their home screen. iOS 8 is just still looking dated. It looks almost the exact same as it did in 2007 with just a few minor tweaks. And I just wish that iOS would go through even a bigger change with iOS 9. So let me know what you guys think about the iPhone 6 Plus. Do you agree with me that it's one of the best devices of 2014, or do you totally disagree? I use a ton of Android devices and there were some great ones this year, but I have to say that this is one of the best phones of 2014. So please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure you hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.